going to be having a conversation that has to do with oil, petroleum sector. And it's federal government to inaugurate 650,000 barrel per day Dangote Refinery. And to discuss this with us, we have Gospel Obele. He's the chief economist of Streetnomics Limited. Good morning to you, Gospel. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, Gospel, let's get right into the issues here now. How big of a game changer is this Dangote refinery for the Nigerian economy?
Yeah, it's going to be a major game changer. And that's because there's been a major supply challenge in the Nigerian economy. First off is the fact that our local refineries aren't working. And then you now have the first major entrant of the private sector initiative into that space. So it's going to be a major game changer. At least a good level of local demand will be met. And it's also going to help us boost the future of local production of crude oil in Nigeria. However, Nigeria would need way more than just a single man private refinery to thrive. We have 5 public sector government-owned refineries that aren't working, 5 or 6 there, and you have countless numbers of illegal refineries, that we haven't yet really decided we want to do with them, other than to try to shut it down. So I think in the first place, there is need to work our local refineries, both the government-owned, as well as find a middle ground with the illegal refineries. So the way the world works now, nothing is black and white, nothing is cast in stone. There are strong political interests and there are strong political investments in the illegal refineries, as illegal as the sea. So the big ticket question is, what can we make do of that precarious illegal refinery situation, as well as facing our 5? If you add everything together, in fact, yeah, Dangote Refinery, all good, great idea. I mean, it's going to help local demand, but it's still not going to meet local demand. There's still going to be a very huge demand side gap. And I mean, there's a huge demand side gap to start with because we've not fixed local energy. We've not fixed power, and we've not fixed our approach. We've not steered our path towards a much more alternative energy source, economy, as the case may be. So as a result, you have strong home demand for fossil fuels. You have strong business demand for fossil fuels as the case may be. But that said, I think it's a very good initiative. It's a very good way to go. But I expect that this will unlock the future and the promise for local refinery conversations in Nigeria.
What kind of inflationary impact do you think removal of fuel subsidies would have on the economy?
It's going to have a very massive impact, and quite honestly, I don't think Nigerians are ready yet for that, because we're already faced with the reality of the cost of living crisis. The Naira redesign, the withdrawal policy, all of the policies that went into the pre-elections and the current transition has shown to us that the economy is at the brink of collapse or even self-destruction. So taking out subsidies is not really the question. The question will be when. When will be the best time to do that? And what will be the best approach to take, to phase out, take out subsidy. If you take out subsidy, it technically means that the cost of transport, the cost of energy will rise. And once the cost of energy rises, which is one of the major reasons why you have high inflation right now, inflation will worsen way more than it is right now. And what that technically means is that cost of production, cost of sourcing raw materials will also increase, cost of logistics will increase. The average Uber fare will also increase. Technically, what that means is that the cost per unit of an item in the marketplace will also increase, because producers will push that burden to the final consumers to also secure their profit margins or revenue margins. So a removal of subsidies is definitely going to cause a much more heated cost of living crisis, if not, a really worsened inflationary position. However, I've also maintained that subsidy is really not the conversation here. The reason why you have subsidy in the first place is because you have 2 basic incentives, 2 basic elements that are fueling the need for subsidy. Number one, a very high local demand for PMS and fossil fuels. Number 2, poor alternative power, as the case may be. So if you fix power by 50%, if businesses are powered, homes are powered by 50%, you will reduce the demand on PMS. And once the demand is reduced on PMS, you will reduce the quantity that needs to be imported. Or, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. and all of that. So the value chain triples up like that, and it reduces your need for subsidy in the first place. But we're not ready for that conversation to start with. But I see subsidy worsening the state of inflation in Nigeria.
All right, thank you for that, Gospel. Now, since Nigeria will no longer import refined petrol from overseas, how much of a savings is this for foreign exchange for the country as a whole?
Since Nigeria no longer imports petrol?
No, since Nigeria will no longer import refined petrol from overseas, looking at the refineries or the impact that it will have,
That's
how much of
the
a saving?
Dangote refinery, yeah?
Yes.
I don't actually think that Nigeria will stop importing fuel or PMS from overseas. It's impossible. I think Dangote refineries can only do 600 and something thousand barrels or something like that. But I can confidently say Dangote alone cannot meet local demand. That's a given. And it's quite unfortunate that we leave all 5 refineries that are all working and the old commission around legal refineries to focus on one refinery, which is not bad. I mean, that's like a miracle happening in context, the private sector player joining in. But what I would say is encouraging more healthy competition in that space. Dangote alone cannot meet local demand. And let's not forget our population is increasing by 3% almost every year. Technically, urban population and semi-urban growth is also increasing accordingly in that order, and fuel consumption, if we continue the way we are, is also increasing. So Dangote cannot meet local demand. You still have a situation where other players who do not have probably the bandwidth or wherewithal like a Dangote to set up a local refinery will still bring their products in. So it may mean that it will reduce the size of what is brought in because a share of that is produced locally, but I don't think it's going to completely eliminate PMS importation. I think also the government is trying to use this Dangote conversation to sound correct in the scheme of things, because this subsidy matter has brought a lot of trouble to our economy. So, I mean, it's just being politically correct to that statement, but it's not economically correct.
Gospel, $800 million from the World Bank as palliatives. How should these funds be utilized, really?
To be honest with you, we're just going in circles. 2012, Shopee was released when the subsidy conversation was, when they removed in-quote subsidy. Then I keep asking myself, why do you keep removing subsidy? And then the so-called monies that are left on the table were put into a program called Shopee. Yeah, the Shopee program was really tailored to some social investment engagement. I think that's where UWIN also came in and all that. It made sense, quite honestly. And that's what the $800 million is trying to achieve as well, in terms of when you take out subsidy, there has to be a soft landing for the economy in terms of spending and all that. There's a potential for that to make a huge difference. But my worry with that is that it's coming at the brink of a new government transition, who may have different priorities, because the way I see this transition happening is like you're going to have some form of different economic priorities from what the current administration has. Maybe guys will find that they're even in the same party and all of that. So the big ticket for me would be channeling those funds to highly productive driven sectors. And even in context of productive driven sectors, investing in the low-hanging fruits and building some form of, for instance, the service sector, the non-oil sector, exports. These are very viable, human capital, education. These are very viable sectors, manufacturing, that can turn the tables around in a year. No country needs 5 years to develop or to channel its people's prosperity longer. The kind of technology and human collaborators or partnerships and talents we have now, we can do that in a year. So if those monies are channeled through very high productive priority sectors, I think that we may make a measure of growth. But the answer to our problem is not 800 million.
All right, Gospel. Now, looking at how we are here discussing the subsidy removal and its possible effects and how things can be mitigated, do you think that these issues, the subsidy removal, the implications, have been effectively communicated by the federal government to the people of Nigeria?
Of course, it has not been effectively communicated, and it has nothing to do with subsidy. I think it has everything to do with public sector communications in Nigeria. You look at every government policy, it's not usually well communicated. Even the central bank MPR conversations, and they just write you the communique, go and read it. If you don't know how to read it, I mean, that's what it is. So I think it's and that's because our institutional ideology around governance is not built for the people. It doesn't carry the people at heart. So if you think of the people if you want to engage the people, if you really want to lead the people and have them believe or know that you're here for them, then a big side of that is how you communicate, when you communicate, who you're communicating to, and managing all the complex streams of that communication to a very large extent, very, citizen structure that I'm almost not interested in what government is doing. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. In more developed economies, you see the average citizen knows what the inflation rate is, knows what the government budget is, knows what the political and economic conversations are, but the average Nigerian really doesn't care. It's trying to survive. All right. So how do you communicate a complex government piece to an average citizen who is really not interested to start with? All right. So we're on two walls of the divide, and I think government needs to do well in its communication. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Gospel Obele. But that's all we can take on Business Express this morning. We've been talking to Gospel Obele, the Chief Economist of Streetnomics Limited. Do have yourself a wonderful morning and a great day ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
All righty. Stick around. It's Smooth 98.1. There's still so much more to come on Smooth Breakfast at 7.